PlayStation has just made the most unpopular corporate announcement in video games since probably about when EA had their whole sense of accomplishment thing that they were pushing. That was dumb. In July of 2027, the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita stores will be taken offline, and in January of 2028, PlayStation will cease to create physical games. And that has been very, very frustrating for a lot of people, especially after, this was crazy when PlayStation pulled over 500 movies from their storefront, and on top of that, they're reaching into everybody's individual PlayStations and pulling it out entirely from their individual collections, regardless of whether or not they bought them, and there is no plans for compensation. And everyone has kind of the same opinions and same feelings about that, which is that that is stupid and it sucks. Now, of course, this has gone on to create a long-running discussion about ownership and what does that mean in a digital era. And of course, me being myself, this has come back to questions, well, what about comic books? What does that mean? And you know what, interestingly enough, I think comic books are probably safe for the time being, but we shouldn't feel comfortable about that. Let me go ahead and explain why. See, I have some very dear friends of mine who collect video games, and they have a lot of video games. It's really, really impressive. But the difference is that anyone I've met who collects video games is collecting video games with the intention that they're going to end up playing them at some point. Whereas a lot of people who collect comic books the same way that people collect cars. They like how they look, they like the investment, they like how much they are worth, they like the fact that some of them are going to gain a lot of value over time, but they are never going to drive them. This has been a sore point of conversation for the comic book community for a very long time. Especially for the last couple of years, there's been a lot of criticisms, especially at some of the bigger publishers in the American market for leaning into this. But we can't get too upset because it kind of works. So I have a rather big collection of comic books. But you know what? I don't have anything for Harley Quinn. Anytime Harley Quinn shows up in a comic book it's because she happens to be there alongside someone I care a lot more about. However, I do have one Harley Quinn book. I have a copy of Harley Quinn number 51. But I don't have this version. I have this one. Leading up to the release of James Gunn's Superman movie, a movie I was very, very excited about for years. I've been looking forward to that for a long, long time. In the lead up to that, they had the Summer of Superman, which was this big celebration of the character, and as part of the celebration, almost every ongoing book had a variant cover where they put the character from that book in a stylized, their version of a Superman costume. And I wanted to get all of them. So I ended up buying a copy of Harley Quinn number 51. This is me buying an extra book that I otherwise would not have gotten because of a gimmick. This and similar practices give comic books the same kind of collecting, trading, and resell environment that you see with trading card games. It's not uncommon that you would go to a comic shop, somebody looking across the racks with their phone out, checking eBay prices and checking what's on the racks so they can get the maximum amount that they can from flipping. And there's another part of that game that I think is different than trading cards, because I don't see this as often as trading cards. People going very, very far out of their way to increase the value of their physical book. And then there's the occasional gimmick book, the book that was made by the publisher, not because they were expecting people to read it and actually care about what was in there. It was released because they knew that it was going to become collector's fodder. Is that slimy? Yeah, kinda. Most people I meet have the same opinions of that as the people who scalp Pokemon cards. But the fact is that it is a huge part of the comic book world. It's a big part of the community, and it brings a lot of money into the industry. And it is a corner of the industry that will not work if it's not a physical copy. This collector's market, however, does have a gold lining in it for anyone else who is just interested in exploring some of these more legendary books, because the legendary books that become hugely popular and very, very valuable in the collector's market, they end up getting reprinted. That curiosity encourages things like trades to be printed or reprinted, or omnibus volumes to be compiled, because it's like, oh well, I mean, this book has gained some sort of notoriety, some sort of extra attention because it's popular and it makes a lot of money for people in the collector's market. Here's another copy of the book so that you don't have to spend $1 million to get it. Also, here's all the stories that follow it, and now you have long serialized superhero comic book events that you can just read through, and it's pretty great. On the flip side of things, the reading community has a lot of the same kind of romanticism you see with other book communities. They like the tactile feeling of things. They like having the weight of the book in your hand. They like being able to just sit down and read something that is real and in the present and in the moment, and isn't connected to the same device that gives you email notifications and text messages. All of that combined, I think, makes comic books safe from going 100% digital. That isn't to say that digital is bad. On the contrary, I think comic books having a digital component within the last 20-25 years has actually been a huge blessing to the entire industry. I think the concern is less so, oh, things are converting to digital, and more so, hey, things are converting to digital, and I don't have control over it. Because making things digital and having digital conversion on things has actually been really, really helpful for a ton of people. But then one of the biggest advantages I've seen to digital comic book conversion is that a ton of comic books have been converted to digital. And I know a lot of people who've benefited from this. It means that certain comic book issues are just really, really easy to find if you just want to read them. I mean, think about how many independently developed video games only exist because they can distribute it through a platform like Steam or through digital storefronts. Or think about how many people who have written comics and they're able to publish their comics because they didn't have to go through one of the big publishers and get all kinds of money to get into printing and then hoping people will buy it. They can make it on like Webtoon. They can put it online for anyone to see, and it cuts down on distribution costs significantly. So I want to make sure that we understand the argument here isn't against all things digital. The argument here is against all things being digital and not having any control over the purchases of digital goods that we make. Instead of having to spend a ton of time and a ton of money and possibly years searching for individual issues to finish out a storyline that you were trying to read, now you can just hop online, you can just read it, which is great. And I know a lot of people who have been able to benefit very greatly from that. But there is another part of this, and this demonstrates the exact argument I've been talking about. This book. Boom Kids once upon a time got the Disney license to make comic books based off of various Disney and Pixar movies. And it is a hard thing to describe just how good these are. You know, usually these kinds of Disney comics and the movie-based comics especially, they feel very kiddie book. Whereas if you watch a Disney movie, you know, they're really for general audiences. They do a good job with that, especially Pixar. But Boom Kids found a way to really capture that magic. So like, you read Boom Kids' Toy Story or Cars or Incredibles or WALL-E or The Muppets, and it feels right. It feels like you're reading a continuation of the movie. They're really, 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 really good. And once upon a time, there was a Disney Comics app. So I went through and I got all the Toy Story comics as I was reading through them, because Toy Story is my favorite thing ever. And I got a bunch of Incredibles comics. And then something happened. I'm not sure what. Nobody has said specifically. I have a few guesses. Boom Kids lost the Disney license prematurely. And all of their comic books got taken down, and the app got shuttered. Just completely gone. And all of my purchases were gone too, and there was no backup for them. And since then, I have spent years trying to find the graphic novels, the physical editions, because I wanted to get my collection back after losing how much money I put into it. And I still haven't done it. There's comics that are rumored to have existed that I can't find. There's books that definitely have existed, but they're extremely rare, and every year they get harder and harder to find. That's an example of what the problem is. I didn't have control over my actual purchased collection of digital comics. And so I've had to resort to getting, sometimes much more expensive, significantly harder to find physical copies of these books that are just hard to get, and they've never reprinted them. That when you make it so it's hard to own something, it becomes hard to preserve it. I've recently kind of gotten interested in early film history, or at least there's a few titles that I want to be able to say I've seen. One of those is the classic silent film Metropolis. Something interesting about this movie is that for close to 100 years, most of it was lost. Everywhere that showed it cut it up in a different way so they could either save time on it or change up the messaging. The American Paramount version changed up the messaging almost entirely. This kind of resulted in a situation where there weren't very many copies around, and we knew there were big chunks of it missing. That is until 2008, when an almost complete copy was found. It's still missing like 10 or so minutes. And that's the version that we see now. That's the version we have today. But, that took a very, very, very long time to find. And now we're pretty sure that the last 10 minutes that are missing from that movie really are just gone forever. But that 1 hour, that changed so much about the movie. It changed the way that the pacing for the movie felt. It changed the way that people looked at the cinematography of it and the pacing and the way that silent film actors acted, because huge chunks of performance were just gone entirely. And that's the kind of thing we lose when you make it so that things aren't easily accessible. People don't have access to art. Art and context just kind of disappears. We talk so much about how much was lost when the Library of Alexandria was burned down. In the same breath, we should be talking about how much was lost when the Wii storefront was closed down, and when the Nintendo DS storefront was closed down, and all of those games disappeared forever. Because it's kind of the same thing, like real human art and real human soul is just gone. Already hundreds of games are missing and just completely gone, completely unavailable. You cannot play them. And that should scare all of us, because in a digital age where not only you, but the people who sold it to you, when somebody else has access to your personal library, they're the ones who have the control over what you can read and whatever you can experience, and malevolent or not, that loss of control should scare us. So cool, that was kind of a bit of a downer, but generally speaking, when you point out a problem, you should also have a solution for that problem, or at least get a conversation going. So what are some solutions? What can we really do about this? First, find the movements that are pushing for better control for what consumers buy and own. The save games people They do a lot of good work, and they've been working very, very hard to create laws and to create legislation that make it so whatever you buy digitally is yours to own and to keep, and no one can take it from you. Vote with your monies. If PlayStation is making choices that you don't agree with, just stop buying from them. If enough people stop buying from them, it's going to change their perception. It's going to change the way they have to do their business to something that is more positive. And plus, there's plenty of older games to keep you busy while you wait. Shop at local shops. Your local gaming store, your local comic book store, they thrive off of getting old stuff into new hands. And if that thrives, if that keeps going, that encourages new things to be brought into that secondary market to keep it thriving and keep it going. Plus, whenever you buy a comic book from your local shop, it creates a data point that they send back to the publisher, which lets them know what books they should give more attention to in the future. Especially if you pre-order. If you pre-order, that becomes like 4 times as much efficient. That's like a much bigger data point. So yeah, that helps books that you like get more publicity, get reprinted later, and makes it easier for people to access it in the future. Another thing you can do is go to your public library. You should be supporting your public library more. But I've yet to meet a local library that didn't also have a really, really strong comic book presence in it. And even if it doesn't, even if you can't find the book you're looking for, most libraries now have a book sharing thing going on with other libraries. They can ship in the book that you want to read. Take advantage of that. It's completely free to you. You already own the public library. You might as well be using it more. You know, those are some ideas here, and I would love to hear your ideas as well, because this is a really big and really, really important topic. So go ahead and put your thoughts in the comments below. And until next time, thank you for joining me. Have a great day. Remember to always be your best self. Hey everybody, thanks for watching all the way through. This was a really big topic, but I felt like it was really important to really sit down and have a good talk about it. So put your thoughts in the comments, and if you want to see more, go ahead and subscribe. What do you think? Was that good? I think that was a good take.